Welcome to Conversate, our podcast where we engage in conversation. On this week's episode, I, Aaron, and Kevin are sitting down and talking about the victory that is ours in Jesus Christ. So if you're feeling defeated or beaten up by the world, if it feels like you just can't get a grasp on life, I think this podcast, this episode in particular today, will be encouraging for you. To find that you can be encouraged that Jesus has won, even though the battles go on, the war is over, Jesus has victory, and you are on the winning team. As always, we hope you enjoy this conversation. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Aaron.
Welcome to another episode of Conversate. Dude, this is number 99.
Number 99, man, that's what that instrumental there was for.
That was.
Yeah.
I think the people dig it. We had so much feedback, not like from our listeners about how much they loved the effects.
Really?
Oh yeah,
man.
I mean, everybody was writing in.
You kind of forwarded those to me, man.
I got emails. I got snail mail. Carrier pigeons.
I got a brick.
Brick house. No, not a single person said a thing. So, we know that we do this podcast for ourselves. Just kidding. We do it for you. But we do love our sound effects.
We do.
And we will continue to use them sparingly.
Yes. Good reminder. Yeah. I got the urge.
Yeah. Well, you want to?
No, I'm good.
The timing will.
Yeah. It'll happen.
We're so sorry, friends. We just love new technology, I guess, and get a little carried away from time to time. We're just big kids.
Yeah, well, it's like this is the adult version of, like a toy.
Yeah.
My daughter Lily has been reading Amazon sent in the mail like way ahead of Christmas time.
Okay. Here's
like 600 gift ideas in a giant book. And now that's the book that she wants to read every night before she goes to bed, which I think is funny.
Gift ideas?
Yes. It's literally just shows pictures of toys.
That's an Amazon catalog, you said?
I think so. Yeah.
Amazon does catalogs?
Well, I guess so.
Oh, man. Yeah. We used to get the JCPenney catalog before Christmas. This big, fat catalog, and we would go through it and circle stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right. I just do love toys. Yesterday, my kids have a couple of remote control cars, and they have not been used in a long time. And then somehow we started doing we just called it Battle Bots. There's a TV show called Battle Bots.
I watched that back in the day, actually.
And so we started watching that show. Anyways, Max and I, so Max has one remote control car, and then Phoebe has one. And I had to keep asking Phoebe if I could use her remote control car so I could battle Max. And then she wanted to take it. And I'm like, I don't want you to take it. I want to play.
It's my toy.
Oh, that's funny. Anyways, we're having a day here. It's for those of you who pick up on this kind of stuff, we're not recording this on Wednesday. This gets released on Wednesday, but it's a little snowy today. Not too much though. This is Monday, October 17th, but we were supposed to get a lot of snow.
Yeah.
And I called it. I told people, I was like, I don't think it's going to snow. And it's hardly snowed at all.
Yeah. Flurries.
That's the flurries.
Yeah. That's probably why I'm thinking about toys.
Yeah.
It's Christmas.
It feels like it. So, this week, our theme was victory.
Mm-hmm.
Victory. And what pops into your head when you think about victory? Like, what's the image that comes into your mind?
Well, the one that just popped into my head was the image of John Elway holding the whatever. I don't know. Is there a name for the NFL trophy?
Yeah, the Lombardi.
That's called the Lombardi?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was holding the Lombardi trophy.
Oh.
That was 96, I think, when I think John Madden said, "This one's for John," or something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then...
Is that when they beat the Packers in the Super Bowl?
That is when they beat the Packers in the Super Bowl, yeah. But I don't know if that image popped in just because you also alluded to football on Sunday.
I did.
Yeah.
I mean...
But it's a good image. Like, there's like confetti falling everywhere. Celebration, you're victorious.
Yeah. And plus the Minnesota Vikings continue to win, so I don't know what to say.
Broncos are up tonight. I'm not too hopeful.
No.
We'll see what
Monday
happens.
Night Football?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, because I think we could take a lot of different looks at like different practical examples. So there's like the sports imagery.
Mm-hmm.
There's also, victory in warfare.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, and that's like when I thought of like the confetti falling there in the Superdome or wherever they played that championship game with Elway. You can look at videos online of when the troops returned from like World War II and the parades held, in like New York, and ticker tape falling from these huge skyrise buildings all throughout the country. Yeah, I mean it's kind of a cool picture too. Yeah.
Yeah. So soldiers returning home, and and I know a lot of that changed like culturally with the Vietnam War. That was a very different kind of war culturally, and how it was accepted, and even fought. But yeah, for sure with with World War II, the troops were celebrated, right? Parades, people welcoming them home and thanking them, and that's kind of what I was thinking too, and how I concluded my sermon. I was talking about how like we've been, we're victorious. Jesus is victorious. We're on his winning team, and we get to go and have these victory parades, and celebrate this victory, but also demonstrate to people and encourage other people that victory is possible. Victory over your difficulties, victory over the battles you're fighting, victory over sin, victory over sickness, victory over death, victory over broken relationships. It's all possible in Jesus, which is incredible. It's incredible. And so, yeah, I remember when I was in high school, I played football, but I also played baseball. Our baseball team was actually much more successful than our football team. My junior year of high school, I was on the varsity team, and we made it to the state tournament for the first time in our school's history. And actually, the baseball team had never been any good, so we were making progress along the way. So like we were the first team to win like the conference championship, and like that was a huge deal. So I think just for winning the conference championship, like there was a parade,
Sure,
and then it was like, you go to the first round of state playoffs, and we won that, and it was like, well, we better celebrate again, And, so we made it to the state tournament. We did not win the state tournament, but it was a huge deal, and like in our small little town, that was what the deal was. It's funny, but in the first couple of years that Abby and I lived here in Hancock, I know of two examples where we were in our house and we heard tons of sirens, like a whole bunch of sirens, and both of us had been in major cities for like 8 years. So when you're in a major city, when we were at the seminary, we lived right next to a hospital, so we
heard it all the time.
Just got used to hearing sirens, and then moving up here, we never heard them, and then we heard a ton, and we're like, oh man, something's going on, And I don't know, this is probably not a safe idea, but like we got in our car and like tried to head towards the sirens.
Well, sure.
And both times, two of these times, it was parades. It was welcoming home athletic teams from like state tournaments and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's that happens up here too, which is really cool. But I just think that's a real, a poignant image, that there is true victory. There is true victory. And I think, and I tried to allude to this in the sermon, I think people get maybe a little bit confused in some of this, where it's like, all right, Satan has been conquered. We say Jesus has won, not Jesus will win. He has already won. But then we're like, but Satan is still real, and there's still spiritual warfare, and we still sin, and people still die. And I think the best way to describe it in a military context is that, and I didn't say this in the sermon, but that the war has been won,
right?
But the battles, there's still these residual battles that pop up.
Yeah, which is exactly, I mean, that's like how World War II ended, right? Like I think historians say that was it D-Day? Was that the decisive battle? Like once that that particular battle was waged and won on the side of the Allies, the rest of the war was kind of like, it's over, but they still fought.
Yeah.
There were still these skirmishes, there were still these battles, but it's like, eventually the losing side owns it and it's like, okay, it's over. We're done.
Right.
And so that's kind of, like, so for us, Jesus has won that decisive victory. Mm-hmm. Like the powers were overthrown in his death on the cross. They're still, like how losers do. They're like, no, we didn't lose.
Yeah, right. Right.
Best of 20.
Right. And so I did say like the devil has no power over you. Sin has no power over you. Death has no power over you. And it's true like eternally, right? Because because I don't want to be misleading and say like, because you believe in Jesus, you're going to be rich and you're not going to be sick and you're not going to die.
Right. Or face difficulty.
Right.
Yeah.
That is not the case. And that's exactly what Jesus is saying in John 16, right? In this world, you will have tribulation.
Right.
In this world, you will have trouble. And so if there's ever any Christian teachers, and maybe you've heard this term before, the prosperity gospel. Mm-hmm. That's really like an American invention. This idea that if you're a good enough Christian, if you pray enough, if you got enough faith, if you give enough money, that life will be good. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just counter to what Jesus says. Right. Jesus says, in this world you will have tribulation. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I've overcome the world. Be courageous. Or as Paul says, be steadfast and immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. Mm-hmm. Knowing that in the Lord, your labor's not in vain. Mm-hmm. Right. And so we can cling to this reality, knowing that Jesus has already overcome the eternal effects that these things have over us. So even though we will die physically, we will rise from the dead physically.
Right.
We actually will. Death will be undone.
Yeah. And I mean, even it's like death is now, death only fast forwards our spiritual advancement. You know what I mean? Like we're not going to become perfectly holy in this life, right? Like we're not going to have a perfect spiritual maturity, but when we die, we will. When we die, like, then I mean, we're in the presence of God, and then when we're resurrected, now we get to fully experience and enjoy that resurrection life, in body and soul.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of like it. That's helpful to remember too for all the little deaths that kind of happen along the way, and the hardships and the tribulation. Like that is at least part of how God actually refines us. It's through challenge, it's through difficulty and hardship. I forget where Paul talks that way. But
I was just reading. I mean, it's all throughout the Bible. In my Old Testament reading this morning. It was in the Psalms actually, but it was talking about that God tests us, and sometimes I have a hard time with this concept. I'll be honest. Sometimes it's like I don't want to believe that God like tests me. There is certainly a difference between testing and tempting.
Right.
The Bible says God tempts no one. Mm-hmm. So God doesn't play games. He's never going to do something in order to like see if you're going to sin, or like he's never going to lead you towards sin.
Right.
If anything's leading you towards sin, that is of the devil. But God does test us. And so in my devotions this morning, I was wrestling with that, and I was like, okay, I can fathom that as a father.
Yeah.
Because I do I want my children to overcome stuff, Mm-hmm. Like I don't know. I was thinking about like teaching them how to swim.
Yeah.
There's these like little moments where I don't know if you've done this with Lily if you're like hold them in the pool and you kind of just let them go a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Just to see you're not gonna let them drown.
Right.
You're not gonna let them. You're not gonna let anything bad happen to them. You're there right the whole time, but just like little bits along the way, just to test them, to, try them, to strengthen, because that strengthens
Right.
them. And so I can acknowledge like that God does that, and God's perfect and holy. He's not going to tempt me. He's not going to lead me towards sin, but he'll allow these little things to come our way to refine us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good. I need refining.
Yeah.
Right. We just went on the Quincy Mine tour recently with my kids, like when they find copper and stuff, like it's not ready to just like, you can't just pull it out of the ground and then, go make something out of it. Like it's gotta go through a refining process, right? You gotta get off the bad stuff and get it just down to the pure copper.
If it's a Magdaloid copper, yes, you're right.
Oh, man.
You read pure Michigan copper.
You read the book,
ready to go. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but yeah, I mean, like that is the metaphor. Yeah, for like metals. Yeah. Refining them. Yeah. So they could be fashioned, used. Well, and I think too, when it comes to God refining you or testing us, I think it's important to remember too, God is not trying. It's not, the picture isn't, all right, buddy, like here, I'm putting you in this position to figure it out yourself, to do it on your own. Like if I think of Peter coming out on the water, the whole point of the test was to look at Jesus. Yeah. Right. To hold on him. And I think a lot of times the trouble in our life comes, it's not because God is like trying to make sure we're hardy enough on our own.
Right.
It's actually to clear us from the foolishness of thinking we can do it without him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you get pushed beyond what you can handle. And some people say that, like, God will never throw any, and God will never give you more than you can handle. And I'm like, I think God intentionally does so that you learn that you have to rely on him.
Right.
I mean, the whole problem of sin is thinking, I don't really need God, you know?
Well, and that whole passage that you're saying God will never give you more than you can handle it's just misquoted. I mean, that whole section is talking about temptation. Like God's not going to tempt you. That's what it says. God's not going to tempt you beyond what you can. Or no,
He'll provide a way out of temptation.
And he'll that's what it says. He'll provide a way out of your temptation. So it's about
he
temptation
is there.
to sin. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's there. And so I think that's a helpful distinction too when it comes to, what it looks like for us to becoming more mature. It's tough. I don't know if I've never really thought about this. Is this where the parent-child, like to become more mature as a, I guess you never lose the father relationship. What I'm trying to say is I think spiritual maturity doesn't look like relying on God less.
No.
It looks like relying on God more.
Oh my goodness.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is odd because when I think of being like more mature as a son, I don't think it means relying on I don't normally think about it meaning like I'm calling my dad all the time.
No, generally it's a little bit more about like being autonomous, from your parents.
And maybe that's a Western thing, I don't know. Like maybe that would be different in another culture where they're more community or family oriented.
Maybe. I don't know. But I certainly have a different relationship with my parents as I've gotten older.
Yeah.
It's not like relying on them to feed me and clothe me, but my appreciation of them is way deeper than it was when I was a child, when I was just, getting my needs met. Now it's actually like an honor and a respect, of holy smokes, like that's incredible that what they've done for me. And now, like I want them in my life, in my life.
Yeah.
And so I think there are some parallels there where, I think, because I think a lot of like immature Christians think of God like that, where it's just like, well, I just need God to meet my needs.
Right.
I've got this thing I've identified that, or there's a gap in my life. I've got this thing, I've got a gap in my life. I need God for those things. The rest of it, I'm
taking care of it.
Yeah. And that's a spiritually immature statement.
Sure.
Right. The spiritually mature statement is to say, I'm incapable of any of this on my own. I'm totally reliant on God for everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And back to that Peter example too. I mean, yeah, I think the way it's written is, had Peter just kept his eyes on Jesus, he would have just
kept walking.
Right. But he saw the wind and the waves, and he was like,
Right.
oh no, how is this even possible?
Yeah. Right. Which is really relatable to life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because you hear Jesus statements like, if we have faith as small as a mustard seed, we can move mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, part of me wants to say, all right, I'm in. But then the skeptical part of me goes, he must not have really meant it. And it's like, well, obviously I'm not going to be able to move a mountain with a faith like that.
Yeah. Well,
right?
sure. Right.
So I don't know, but
yeah, I have read some interesting things about that particular pericope and having to do potentially with like the holy mountain, like Zion. So like the temple, like Jesus making kind of a subtle commentary about how that's going to move. Right. But I don't know. Maybe that's just people justifying it because they've never been able to relocate a mountain, physical mountain with their faith. But I mean, because the point of our faith also is not to, the point of our faith isn't to be able to do, these kind of spectacles for people or to prove ourselves to the world by doing some sort of, amazing thing, right? Because that's like Jesus on being tested in the wilderness when Satan, tells him to jump off the mountain, and God will save you. So like if you just have a great faith and trust in God, you should really go out and do this really outlandish thing because you trust in God. Oh, right. He's going to keep you. It's like, that's not the point.
Right.
Like God has a mission in mind. And that's what Jesus is paying attention to and submitting himself to, in that wilderness story. And for us too, like our faith doesn't have to be it's not some big show, I think, to prove to the world how, whatever courageous we can be. But I don't know. I feel like it has to do with leaning into what is God? What is God's? I mean, if I'm trusting in God, I also want to be seeking what it is that His will is, and that might look way different than mine. I mean, the cross looked way different than everyone else's expectations, which would have been probably more showy and glorious and victorious, in an earthly sense.
Oh, for sure.
And
that was the expectation of the Jewish people, that their Messiah would be this victorious king, like David in the past, who conquered armies and earthly enemies, and that this king would come and get rid of the Roman Empire and reestablish the temple and the worship life of the people, of Israel, and victory in God's eyes just it looks very different. The enemies that really wage the greatest war against us are not those of flesh and blood, but the evil foe. And so Satan needed to be crushed, and sin needed to be taken care of, and death needed to be undone.
And that becomes, I think, a helpful inroad too to understanding again that prosperity gospel, right? Yeah. Like we're not talking about external, physical blessedness. That's not the marker or the sign of your victory. This struggle is deeper, and it's against Satan. It's against the flesh, like our own flesh, like Paul in Romans 7, and kind of the rebellious way of the world. And in victory in those areas, like through Jesus, is going to look like his cross, right? When he says, to pick up your cross and follow me, it's going to be hard. Like it'll be a struggle. I mean, that's been my experience when it comes to thinking about having, at the beginning of this episode, I think we were talking about, like victory over certain sins in your life, or victory over, say broken relationship, things like that. In my experience anyway, those things have been like long slogs and like in no way really glorious. Like usually it's very painful, the process of it, because there's a lot of defeat that comes, in the wake of it. But as we discover, like, no, Jesus, I need you. Like, I want to go repair this relationship, but I go in and then I remember all these things and I get, frustrated again, or, I lose your path, Jesus, the one that's kind of self-giving and loving of others. And I mean, to forgive somebody. So like in a broken relationship, if you want that to be healed, it's going to take forgiveness, and forgiveness is like absorbing pain, you know, it's absorbing some, at least, of the mess that's gone on. Like, it's not demanding restitution, and that's hard in a relationship. And so, so these things, like, they can happen, but don't imagine you're not going to be surfing on the waves, you know, like you're going to be walking, you know, maybe for a few steps.
Well, and it's like, I don't know, fleeing from sin or turning from temptation. It is possible with God's help.
Absolutely.
Like you don't have to sin, and it is possible to say no to it. But it's sort of like, I don't know, like alcoholism, you know, like an addict. If once somebody admits that they're they're an addict, they're always an addict,
right? Even when you're 10,000 days sober,
you're still an addict. And so that imagery is kind of interesting in as it relates to sin. You know, like I may have overcome certain sins, but I'm still a sinner.
Yeah, right.
You know,
right.
and so there's like that because that's a humility thing that comes with it, where it's like, you know, until Christ returns, like we just can't, like, we will never not be sinners.
Yep.
And we should never be so boastful or arrogant to say, "Ha, I took care of it.
I've done it."
You know, because then you kind of you lose your edge almost. You know, and then you become lax, and then you think, then you turn to pride instead.
Right.
You know,
your eyes have moved off of Jesus.
Yeah.
You start to, and you'll sink.
Yeah. And so in your desperation, though, where you say, you know, if you overcome a sin, give God credit for that, and say, Lord, keep me strong and steadfast. I don't want that. I want to hate that sin, and I want to love you. You know, keep my eyes on you.
Yep.
And that's just that constant thing. But that's where we can lean back on last week's episode on baptism, you know,
right.
and rely on our baptism, and rely on the fact that we're children of God, that we're adopted by Him, right? All these good words, that we belong to Him, that we're His property. Yeah,
exactly.
So
and that even if I fail again in this thing that I thought I had conquered, that doesn't mean Jesus wasn't victorious. Right. Then that's the victory we always come back to. It's not my personal victories. Those are sweet.
Yeah.
You know, it's a sweet taste when that happens. But it's not in me, it's in Him, you know. It's His victory, and that's what we cling to as we celebrate every Sunday. And why we do it on a Sunday, because that's when Jesus rose. Yeah. So we always got to come back to the victory, His victory.
Amen. Yeah. Even if you lose a battle, the victory's already won.
Victory's won. That's right.
And it's yours, and you're on the winning team, and that's a good place to be. And so, again, like there's gonna be trouble. There's gonna be tribulation. You know, I've got stuff in this day that I wish I didn't have to deal with. Right. But I can take heart and be courageous, in Christ, and find great hope in that. And I hope you too can, Kevin, and those of you listening or watching today, just take heart, hold on, be steadfast, and immovable. In Jesus Christ. His Holy Spirit is with you, encouraging you, emboldening you, strengthening you. That's a good place to be. So you're on the winning team. All right. We're on it together.
Heck yeah, buddy.
All right. Good to be chatting with you again, and have a great rest of your day.
You too, man.